Growing up, I always knew my place in the family pecking order, dead last. My name is Emma, and for as long as I can remember, my older sister Kate was the household superstar, while I was just there. I still remember the kitchen table moment when I was 7 years old, proudly showing Mom my perfect spelling test. She barely looked up, her focus glued to Kate's college applications sprawled across the table. "That's nice, honey," she murmured, already flipping through another draft of Kate's essay. "Now, Kate, what if we rephrase this section about your volunteer work? It'll really make you stand out." Kate was 10 years older than me, and by the time I could form memories, she was already collecting accolades like kids collected trading cards. Student body president, valedictorian, full ride to Princeton. Kate did it all. And Mom and Dad, they never let a single accomplishment go unnoticed. But while they were busy cheering Kate on at debate competitions and award ceremonies, I had Grandpa Joe. He lived alone in the big house on Maple Street, the one with the creaky wraparound porch where we'd sit for hours. He'd tell me stories about his days as a sharp-witted businessman and share his stash of chocolate chip cookies. "You know, kiddo," he'd say, sliding a cookie my way, "sometimes the quietest ones in the room end up making the biggest waves." He'd wink at me then, like we shared a secret the rest of the world couldn't understand. Every day after school, while Mom juggled her real estate deals and Dad stayed late at his law firm, I'd walk to Grandpa's house. He'd help me with my math homework, using equations to teach me about compound interest and investments. "Numbers never lie, Emma," he'd say, his eyes sparkling with the kind of pride I never got from my parents. At home, though, the air was suffocating. Every conversation revolved around Kate's latest triumph. "Did you hear? Kate's already a junior partner at 28. Mom would gush. Dad would nod approvingly, adding, "She's always been destined for great things." I'd sit quietly, pushing peas around my plate, trying to fade into the wallpaper. Despite everything I worked hard, straight A's, every business club imaginable, I poured myself into school, chasing a dream no one else seemed to believe in, except Grandpa. The summer before my senior year, everything changed. Grandpa was diagnosed with cancer, and it was spreading fast. I spent every free moment at his side, reading him his favorite books about business and economics. Even as his body weakened, his mind remained sharp. "Emma," he rasped one afternoon, his hand cool and fragile in mine. "Promise me something." "Anything," I whispered, fighting back tears. "Go to college. Study business like we always talked about. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do." "I promise," I choked out. I'd already started looking at schools. State University has an amazing business program. He smiled weakly, his eyes full of pride. "That's my girl. And remember, what do numbers never do?" "They never lie," I said, managing a small smile. 2 weeks later, he was gone. The funeral was a blur of black dresses and hollow condolences. Kate flew in from New York, making sure everyone knew how much she'd sacrificed to be there. Mom fussed over Kate's travel arrangements more than she mourned Grandpa. I threw myself into my college applications, determined to honor my promise. When my acceptance letter to State University's business program arrived, I felt like I could finally breathe. I rushed into the kitchen that evening, practically bursting with excitement. "Mom, Dad, I got in. State University's business program accepted me." Silence. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance, one of those loaded looks that always meant bad news. Kate, seated at the table with them, didn't even glance up from her phone. "Honey," Mom started in her saccharine voice, "we need to talk about college." Dad cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Your college fund? Well, it's gone." "What?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mom shifted uncomfortably. "We gave it to Kate. For her wedding." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "My college fund?" "Grandpa's college fund. You gave it to Kate." "Don't be dramatic," Mom said, waving me off. "Kate's marrying James, the investment banker, remember? They needed help with the Plaza wedding and a house down payment. You'll figure something out. You're good with numbers." Besides, Kate chimed in with a smile that wasn't even apologetic. "You can be my maid of honor. Isn't that better than some boring business degree?" I fled to my room, the acceptance letter crumpled in my hands, tears blurring my vision. Downstairs, I could still hear them chatting about wedding venues and centerpieces as if they hadn't just crushed my dreams. That night, I lay awake, Grandpa's words echoing in my mind. "Numbers never lie. There was something I was forgetting, something important. Then it hit me. 2 weeks before he passed, Grandpa had shown me his office, the old oak desk, the keys, the false bottom in the drawer. Just in case, he'd said with a knowing smile. The next morning, I drove to Grandpa's house, clutching the spare key he'd given me. The house felt eerily quiet, as though it had been holding its breath for this moment. I made my way to his office and opened a drawer, my fingers finding the hidden latch. Inside was a single envelope with my name on it. As I held it, trembling, I couldn't have known that Grandpa's final lesson about numbers was about to change everything. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope from Grandpa's desk. Inside was a single sheet of paper, his familiar, precise handwriting filling the page. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means you've remembered our lessons. Numbers never lie, and neither did my faith in you. For years, I've watched your parents elevate Kate and disregard your dreams. That ends now. What they don't know, what no one knows except my lawyer, is that I've built something extraordinary during my years in business. The house you're standing in is only a small piece of it. I've established a trust fund, Emma, one that dwarfs your old college fund. Everything I have, I'm leaving to you. The details are with my lawyer, Arthur Bennett. His card is attached to this letter. He'll explain everything, but here's the short version. You are now the owner of Maple Street Investment Group and all its holdings. Your parents will receive the standard inheritance as expected, a modest portion of my liquid assets. They will never know about the company or its portfolio unless you choose to tell them. I've ensured that. Use it wisely. Get your degree. Build the future you deserve. And remember, numbers never lie. All I love, Grandpa Joe. P.S. The combination to my wall safe is your birthday. Inside, you'll find something else I left for you. I read the letter 3 times, my hands trembling more with each pass. Could this be real? Then I heard Grandpa's voice in my head. Numbers never lie. Behind Grandpa's favorite painting of the New York Stock Exchange, I found the safe. The lock clicked open, and inside was another envelope stuffed with documents, deeds, bank statements, company ledgers. Maple Street Investment Group wasn't just some small business. It was a multi-million-dollar corporation with properties and investments spanning 3 states. And according to these papers, I owned all of it. The next morning, I called Arthur Bennett's office. His secretary put me through immediately when I mentioned my name. "Ah, Miss Emma," he greeted me warmly. "I've been expecting you. Your grandfather spoke highly of you. Can we meet this afternoon?" Hours later, sitting in Mr. Bennett's office, the reality of it all sank in. The trust fund, including all investments, is worth approximately $47 million, he explained. Your grandfather structured everything to ensure your complete control. The will your parents saw is only partial. The rest was transferred to you directly before his passing. Walking out of the office, I felt a strength I'd never known. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Don't forget, Kate's wedding planning dinner tonight. We need to finalize your maid of honor duties." I smiled. Tonight, we have much to discuss. That evening, I arrived at the dining room to find my family deep in conversation about floral arrangements. Finally, Mom said without looking up, "We've been waiting. Kate needs to decide on bridesmaid dresses." "Actually," I said, setting my bag down, "I have something more important to discuss." Dad sighed, already defensive. "Emma, we've been over this. The money went to Kate's wedding. It's what's best for the family." "Best for the family?" I repeated, pulling out the trust documents and my state university acceptance letter. Like stealing my future was best for the family. Dad's expression darkened. "What's this about?" I spread the documents across the table. Maple Street Investment Group. Grandpa's company. It's worth millions. He left it to me. Mom's face turned ghostly pale. Kate dropped her pen. Even James looked unsettled. "This can't be right," Dad stammered, flipping through the papers. "Oh, it's right," I said. "Grandpa taught me well. And now I'm going to college on my terms. The days of being your afterthought are over." Kate tried for her usual charm. "Emma, you'll still help with the wedding, right? I mean, we're family." I laughed. "Family? You mean the family that stole my college fund? Find someone else to finance your dream wedding. Maybe James can manage with his investment banker salary." Dad stood, his voice stern. "Now, Emma, don't do anything rash." I cut him off. "Rash? Like giving away my future to pay for Kate's second house? Don't worry, I won't make your mistakes. I'll build something real, something Grandpa would be proud of. I gathered the papers and turned to leave. Oh, and Kate, you might want to downsize your wedding plans. Something tells me your budget just took a hit. Their protest echoed as I walked out, but I didn't look back. Standing later on the porch of my new home, Grandpa's home, I felt his presence, his lessons guiding me. I pulled out my acceptance letter and smiled. Numbers never lie, I whispered. And for the first time, I was the one holding the pen to write my story. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. I moved into Grandpa's house, spending evenings in his, now my office, poring over years of business records and investment portfolios. It was overwhelming at first, but Mr. Bennett guided me through every step. Your grandfather often spoke of your potential, he said during one meeting. He was confident you'd excel at this. His faith in me felt like a lifeline. Meanwhile, my family's reaction unfolded exactly as I'd expected. The texts and calls came in waves, each one more desperate than the last. Emma, sweetie, let's talk about this rationally. Mom. Princess, we can work something out. Dad. You're being ridiculous. This is my wedding we're talking about. Kate. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on preparing for college and acclimating to my new role. Grandpa had left a strong management team in place at Maple Street Investment Group, ensuring I could oversee operations while pursuing my education. But it didn't take long for the situation to escalate. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Mom sitting at the table, clutching a coffee mug like it was her last grip on sanity. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. About your father. I poured myself a coffee and leaned against the counter, keeping my distance. How did you get in? She glanced down, sheepish. I still had your grandfather's spare key. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Emma, please. She took a deep breath, her tone shifting to one of carefully crafted concern. Your father, he's not well. The stress of all this, the shock, it's affecting his health, his blood pressure. I cut her off, my voice sharp. You're really going to play the guilt card? After everything you've done? Her composure cracked. We did what we thought was best, she snapped, standing abruptly. Kate's wedding, her house. These are important family milestones. And my education wasn't. I shot back. My future didn't matter to you. Of course it mattered, but, she faltered, searching for the words. Kate needed. Kate needed, I repeated bitterly. Kate always needed, and Kate always got. Well, guess what? Grandpa made sure I'd never have to depend on what Kate needed ever again. Her face hardened, a flash of anger overtaking her guilt. Your grandfather would be ashamed of how selfish you're being, keeping all this money to yourself while your sister has to scale back her wedding plans. Grandpa would be ashamed. I walked to the office and returned with the letter he'd left me. I thrust it into her hands. Read it. Read how he watched you favor Kate all these years. Read how he made sure I finally get a chance at my own dreams. Her hands trembled as she read the letter. With each line, the color drained from her face. When she looked up, tears welled in her eyes. Emma, we never meant. Get out, I said quietly but firmly, and leave the key. Her hand lingered on the table as she set the key down. We're still your family. Family? I gestured to the door. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't dismiss dreams. Family doesn't play favorites for decades and then cry foul when the tables turn. After she left, I called a locksmith to change all the locks. Then I called Mr. Bennett. Can they challenge the will? I asked. Your grandfather was thorough, he assured me. The trust is ironclad. It was established and transferred while he was alive. They have no legal recourse. That evening, a text from James, Kate's fiancé, appeared on my phone. Can we meet? Just us. There's something you need to know. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a downtown coffee shop. James looked uncomfortable as he slid a stack of papers across the table. Kate's been lying, he said, his voice low. About the house, the wedding. Everything. I frowned, flipping through the papers. Bank statements, savings accounts. What is this? They never needed your college fund, he admitted. We had more than enough saved. Kate, she just didn't want you to go to college. She was afraid you'd outshine her. A cold, bitter anger surged through me. Why are you telling me this? James hesitated, then sighed. Because I can't marry someone like that. I called off the wedding this morning. The fallout was immediate. Dad called, furious, accusing me of destroying Kate's happiness. Mom sent long emails about forgiveness and family duty. And Kate? She showed up at my house that night, mascara streaked down her face, pounding on the door. "This is all your fault," she screamed through the intercom. "James left me because of you." I watched through the security camera, calm in the face of her fury. "No, Kate," I replied through the speaker. "James left because he found out who you really are. The same person who stole her sister's future out of pure spite." Her face twisted in rage. "You think you're so smart now, with your big house and your company? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing. Just the little sister who needed Grandpa to buy her success." I let her rant, her voice echoing in the night. When she finally ran out of steam, I pressed the intercom button again, my voice steady. "The difference between us, Kate, you peaked in high school. But me, I'm just getting started." The camera captured her expression, shock, followed by bitter realization. For the first time, Kate understood that she wasn't the star of this story anymore. As she drove away, Grandpa's words echoed in my mind. Numbers never lie. And now, for the first time, the numbers were finally on my side. The weeks after Kate's meltdown marked a turning point. State University's fall semester was starting, and I threw myself into preparing for classes. My home office, newly equipped thanks to Mr. Bennett's help, became my command center for running Maple Street Investment Group remotely. But my family wasn't ready to let go. Miss Emma Maria, my secretary, called one morning. Her voice carried a hint of apprehension. "Your father's here at the company office. He's demanding to speak with you about some investment opportunities." I set aside the quarterly reports I'd been reviewing. "What kind of opportunities?" "Something about property developments and family business ventures." He's very insistent. Of course he was. Dad wasn't here out of concern. He was a lawyer. He knew exactly how much Maple Street was worth. "Tell him I'm in meetings all day," I replied coolly. "And Maria? Let security know he's not authorized to access any company information." Dad didn't give up easily. He began sending me elaborate business proposals, overly ambitious development projects wrapped in flowery language about restoring family unity through shared ventures. Then came the email from Kate. "Dear Emma, I know we've had our differences, but I've been doing some thinking. I've enrolled in business school. I want to understand what Grandpa taught you, to learn about the company. Maybe we could work together. I could start at entry level, learn the ropes. I know I messed up with the college fund thing. I was jealous and insecure, but we're sisters. Doesn't that count for something? Love, Kate." I stared at the email, her words stirring a mix of skepticism and painful memories. I thought of the years of favoritism, the betrayals. Then I remembered a conversation with Grandpa shortly before he died. The hardest part of business, he'd said, isn't making money. It's knowing who to trust with it. I wrote back a single sentence. "Send me your business school acceptance letter." 3 days later, Mr. Bennett called me, sounding troubled. "Your sister just tried to schedule a meeting with me," he said. "She wanted to discuss restructuring the company leadership. Claimed you'd agreed to make her co-CEO. A cold anger settled in my chest. There was no acceptance letter, no sincere effort to learn. This was just another play for control. I called an emergency board meeting that afternoon. As the majority shareholder, I had the authority to implement changes. Effective immediately, I announced no immediate family members may be hired without unanimous board approval and verified qualifications. The policy passed without hesitation. That evening, my phone buzzed with a series of increasingly volatile texts from Kate. "How dare you block me from my family's company? You're nothing but a spoiled brat who got lucky. Mom and Dad are heartbroken. Is that what you wanted?" I was debating whether to respond when my home security system alerted me to movement on the porch. The camera showed Mom, Dad, and Kate standing there, their expressions a mix of determination and frustration. "Emma, open up," Dad called out. "We need to talk about the company." I pressed the intercom button, my voice steady. "There's nothing to talk about. The company isn't family property, it's a professional business." "We're your family," Mom cried. "You owe us." "I owe you nothing," I interrupted. Kate tried to lie her way into a role she isn't qualified for. "Dad wants to use the company to fund his pet projects, and you're enabling all of it." "You ungrateful little," Kate started, but Dad placed a hand on her arm. Princess, he said, switching to his lawyerly tone. Let's be reasonable. We could all benefit from working together. Your sister has valuable experience. In what? I cut him off. In taking what doesn't belong to her? In manipulating people to get her way? No thanks. This isn't over, Kate spat as they finally turned to leave. You can't hide behind Grandpa's money forever. I watched them drive away, then called Mr. Bennett. I need to know if there's any other way they could interfere with the company, I said. I'm already on it, he assured me. Our legal team is drafting a comprehensive protection plan. But Emma, there's something else you should know. What is it? Your grandfather left one more provision in the trust. It won't activate until your next birthday. I froze. What kind of provision? I'm not at liberty to say just yet, he replied, his tone measured. But I can tell you this, it's something significant. And just like that, I realized this battle wasn't over. The family drama had only just begun. My 25th birthday dawned on a crisp autumn morning, the kind of day Grandpa would have loved. But I couldn't enjoy it, not with Mr. Bennett's promised call looming over me. Grandpa's final surprise had been a cryptic weight on my shoulders for months. When the call came, his words stopped me cold. Emma, your grandfather left a video for you. He was very clear. It wasn't to be shown until this exact day. An hour later, I sat in Mr. Bennett's office, the air thick with anticipation. When Grandpa's face flickered onto the screen, my chest tightened. He looked frail, older than I'd ever seen him, but his eyes still held that mischievous twinkle. The one that always said he was 5 steps ahead of everyone else. Happy birthday, kiddo, he began, his voice raspier but warm. If you're watching this, you've learned about the company and the trust. You've taken on responsibilities I knew you could handle. But there's one more lesson we need to cover, about numbers. He held up a thick folder. Your parents think they know everything about their inheritance. What they don't know is that their portion came with conditions that activate today. My breath hitched as he continued. Their inheritance has been held in trust until now. If they've proven themselves responsible, supportive, and considerate, particularly to you, it becomes theirs, no strings attached. But if they've shown themselves to be selfish, manipulative, or unworthy, his smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet resignation. Well, numbers never lie. The video paused. Mr. Bennett leaned forward. Emma, based on the documented events over the past months, the theft of your college fund, attempts to interfere with the company, harassment, they've violated every condition your grandfather set. I blinked, struggling to process. What does that mean? It means their inheritance reverts to you. Effective immediately, you have complete control over all their assets, properties, investments, everything that was tied to their portion of the trust. Everything? I whispered. Mr. Bennett nodded. Your grandfather was meticulous. He anticipated every possible scenario. Their actions left no room for debate. The weight of his words sank in, and just as it did, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom lit up the screen. Happy birthday, sweetie. We're having a family dinner tonight to celebrate. Time to put all this unpleasantness behind us. I looked up at Mr. Bennett, incredulous. They don't know yet, do they? No, he said. But they'll be receiving official notification this afternoon. The drive home was surreal. Memories of their dismissals, the favoritism, the betrayals played in my mind. And now, the tables had turned. I controlled everything. The text started within hours. Mom, this must be a mistake. Call us immediately. Dad. Princess, we need to discuss this rationally. Kate. You can't do this to us. That money was supposed to be ours. I ignored them all, instead poring over Grandpa's meticulous notes in his old office. Page after page laid out every condition, every safeguard. It was all there, every way they might try to manipulate or control me, accounted for with his signature precision. Then the doorbell rang. The security camera showed them, Mom, Dad, and Kate, standing on my porch, their faces pale and frantic. Emma, please, Mom cried, tears streaming down her face. We'll lose everything. I pressed the intercom button, my voice cold and steady. Like I lost my college fund. Like I lost years of support and recognition. Like I lost a normal family relationship because of your choices. We can fix this, Dad said, his voice slipping into his practiced lawyerly tone. We'll make it right. It's too late, I replied. Grandpa knew exactly who you were. He gave you every chance to prove him wrong, and you failed. Numbers never lie, remember. Kate shoved forward, her face twisted with rage. You spoiled, entitled brat. You think you can just take everything from us? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Kate, you did this to yourselves. Every lie, every manipulation, every time you treated me like I was nothing, it's all documented. Grandpa just made sure there were consequences. Their desperation was written all over their faces as the truth sank in. Years of scheming and favoritism had led them to this moment. You have 30 days to vacate the house, I said, my tone final. Mr. Bennett's office will handle the details. Through the camera, I watched them stumble back to the car, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. That night, I sat on the wraparound porch under a canopy of stars, just as I used to with Grandpa. His words echoed in my mind. Sometimes the quietest ones in the room end up making the biggest waves. The waves had finally crashed, sweeping away years of pain and resentment. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. 3 months had passed since my birthday revelation. The family house had been sold, and Kate, along with my parents, had downsized to a modest apartment on the other side of town. Life moved on, but it had a way of circling back when you least expected it. I was in my office at Maple Street Investment Group, reviewing quarterly reports, when Maria's voice crackled through the intercom. Miss Emma, there's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister. I hesitated before answering. Send her in. When Kate walked in, she looked different. The designer outfits and polished perfection were gone, replaced by simple department store clothes and practical, unpolished nails. She looked real. I got a job, she began, without pleasantries or excuses. Junior administrative assistant at Preston Financial, minimum wage. Entry level. I leaned back in my chair, waiting for her to continue. It's the first job I've ever gotten on my own merit, she said with a wry smile. No family connections, no favors. Just me, my resume, and well, not as many skills as I thought I had. There was a pause. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She exhaled, pulling a worn envelope from her bag. Because you were right. About everything. About me peaking in high school. About me never earning anything for myself. I found my old diaries while we were moving. Her voice faltered. Pages and pages of me plotting how to keep you down. How to make sure you never overshadowed me. God, I was awful. I studied her face, searching for any sign of manipulation. But there was only raw honesty. Mom and Dad enabled it, she went on, her voice trembling. But I was the one who suggested taking your college fund. I was the one who always made sure they focused on my achievements instead of yours. I was so afraid of you outshining me that I became this person I don't even recognize anymore. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't bother wiping them away. I'm not here to ask for money or a job or even forgiveness, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. I just needed to tell you that you won, not just the money or the company, but everything. You became someone while I was busy trying to stop you from becoming anyone at all. She turned to leave, but I stopped her. Kate? She paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Grandpa used to say something about waves and quiet people, I said. But he also said something else, about second chances being earned, not given. She nodded slowly, understanding what I meant. I guess I should start with earning my own way then. That's probably a good place to start, I agreed. But Kate, when you've really done the work, when you've earned it, maybe we can talk about what comes next. She managed a faint smile before walking out. After she left, I leaned back in Grandpa's old chair, the weight of the moment settling over me. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down to see a text from Mom. Your father and I are selling our remaining assets to pay for night school. He's learning bookkeeping, and I'm studying to be a teacher's assistant. We should have supported your education when we had the chance. We're sorry, not for losing the money, but for losing you. I set the phone down, letting their words sink in. Grandpa had always said numbers never lied, but sometimes they revealed truths that people couldn't see until it was too late. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I walked through Grandpa's house, my house now. Memories of afternoons spent here with him filled my mind. On my desk, the latest quarterly report showed Maple Street Investment Group thriving under my leadership. I picked up my phone and typed out a reply. Asterisk, dear Mom and Dad. I hear Preston Financial has some good entry-level positions open. No guarantees, but if you're serious about earning your way back, maybe that's a place to start. Numbers never lie, but they can also show us the way forward. Emma asterisk. As I sat on the wraparound porch watching the last light fade from the sky, I thought about Grandpa's lessons. Numbers had taught me so much, but they weren't the most important lesson. Sometimes the biggest waves aren't the ones that crash violently, but the quiet ripples that follow, reshaping everything in their path. Grandpa had been right all along. Numbers never lie, but they can teach us to see the truth and maybe even start again.